I mean, at first, I'd like to just congratulate Cleveland. They're a hell of a basketball team. They're going to be on probably a long run right now, but they're well coached. They have um, a group that fits and plays the right way. So we were humbled, um, but they had uh, so much to do with a lot of how we looked. None of us would have guessed, the series would have gone this way coming out of our two play-ins, and even how we competed in the first two games, but they just took it to another level. Obviously, we didn't play well, and we didn't meet any kind of level from there, but they left us behind these last two games. Um, I'm, I'll be able to separate, this because this is, a group that it's a shame that will be remembered for these two home games here and taking a 4-0 sweep, because this group showed a lot of character and resilience. It was a fun group to be around, especially those last 8 weeks of the season while we were just grinding, struggling, grinding, and then playing our best basketball at the end of the season when it mattered. It was a fun group to be around. I felt fully alive, as alive as I've felt, in a while in a regular season. It's a big credit to this group and how connected this group was, how this group was really playing for each other. Um, but it'll be a story that nobody really cares about because of how it ended, and I get it. But I feel for the locker room. This group has put a lot into this season, um, and to be able to overcome a lot of things, and then to have those two play-in games where most people would say, what's the big celebration? Mediocrity, but it was a lot of fun. When we won in Atlanta and flying to Cleveland, uh, it was just a lot of fun on that plane ride. Really felt like this group was connected. I wish it was, um, potentially, we had somebody else, just to extend this, but uh, Cleveland's a hell of a basketball team.
You touched on it somewhat there, Spo, but how do you make sense of the whole year? I mean, there were some highs, there were some lows, there were some the 10-game streak and all that stuff. I mean, it's just
There's a lot of lows, probably more lows, but the thing that I'll always remember about this group was that all the adversity that we fought through it, to end up playing our best basketball. We were a couple of plays here or there from going 8 straight, possibly 10 straight. Go 10 down and then 10 straight. Like it's that close. It would have been a great story. But more importantly, it's this league and this association, a long NBA season. You're always given that opportunity for that gift of adversity, and to have a group that responded in the way that you wanted a group to respond. To become more connected, to have develop more resolve to try to overcome things. It was a fun experience. I think I became better from it. I hope the players became better from it. Um, but damn, it was humbling. This series was humbling. These last two games were embarrassing. But Cleveland's also a very good team. We won whatever we won. They won 65. We're as irrational as we usually are, thinking that we have a chance to win this series. And they showed us why, you know, we weren't ready, for that.
Last year's playoff series against Boston kind of set the tone for Tyler's offseason. What lessons do you think Tyler could take
I
from this
don't know.
series and these
We'll,
last?
we'll get to that. Like all these experiences are super important um, for all of our guys. Um, he had a great game too, but it didn't. We just couldn't get it over the top to win. They schemed him, which is going to happen for the rest of his career. He's a competitor, so he loves that kind of challenge. Um, and he'll figure it out. He'll have a great offseason. I don't want to think about that right now, but I know Tyler. I know what he's about. He's gonna work and he'll come back better from this.
it's no doubt been a hectic season for Bam and Tyler leading the group, whether it be roster changes in the middle of the season and stuff like that. You mentioned it. Can this sort of humbling loss like this build character for them going into the future, especially?
They already have the competitive character, but these kind of losses, and getting swept, you know, it can motivate you. Those guys have great competitive character, and a drive. This league is tough. You got to be about it. Those two guys are about it, and it's not like a bunch of teams have figured it out. I'm looking around, and it's like every playoff series is there's a lot of parity right now. And then, yeah, this is embarrassing, but there's going to be a bunch of teams that are out like with us too, that have big aspirations. But they'll get to work. I just mentioned Tyler, but Bam, is the ultimate winner. He's going to figure it out too, and collectively when we get, back together, these lessons for the young guys that had an experience in this in the two play-ins in this playoff series will become better, from it. There's no way to fast track it unless you go through it, and sometimes there's pain, from that. I said it with a couple of our young guys. We needed the 25-year-old version now. Can't do that, obviously. You got to go through the experiences to get that. But I really enjoyed this group. I enjoyed the young guys. I enjoyed the vets. To push through, and everybody felt the same way as I do. It's embarrassing, but I think everybody felt this will be at least the regular season and the two play-ins, something that the guys will remember, moving forward.
You said it, I think, during the losing streak. These are lessons nobody really wants to have to learn, or the challenges you don't want to have to overcome. But what you were just saying with the young guys, what is this experience? What does this postseason experience specifically look like in terms of building on it tangibly moving forward?
Yeah, we'll find out. But we're not going to change our standard, right? But I also, understand that, Tyler and Bam have taken on the mantle, and it's a slightly different role than they've had, previously. And, you got to work through that. Our young guys, I always forget, Nico, how old he is. I just expect him to be 25 and 26, and I will continue to treat him that. Next year, I'll expect him to be 30, and expect him like, yeah, you were off for the 6 weeks before this. So what? Be ready, and the last year's playoff experience was really important for him. The two international experiences were really important for him. He's grown so much. I can step back and recognize that. Khalil has grown so much. When we drafted him, I couldn't maybe possibly say I expected him to play, 60 plus games and start how many ever games he did, and then start in the playoffs. And he just turned 21 in this playoff series. So he played against a center that's played 500 more games than him, and has had playoff series where he's had whatever kind of feeling about a disappointment or whatever that motivated him for the next year. We'll have, Pella played a bunch of minutes in this series. Those will be important things moving forward, but as an organization, yeah, we're gonna look at this and say this is unacceptable. We got to get to another level, but you can balance. Multiple things can be true. And guys got a lot better. Guys got fast tracked and a lot better. That really helped us in the two play-ins just to get in this. And what I loved about this group is how badly they wanted to get in this dance. And that's something, moving forward.
You spoke pregame about Khalil and the value of playoffs, and then you pulled him 3 minutes in, didn't put him back until late. what happened with Khalil at the start, and why did you make that decision?
I mean, it was just a quick run. It's not necessarily an indictment on one player, but it was, these are fundamental lessons that the thing I like about Khalil is he has a coachability to him. He has an ambition to him. Uh, he's going into a playoff series where, yes, he's watched games and he's watched all the film, but he hasn't like really been in something to really know. He's playing against a very experienced center, and I don't know how many. I think he's been in 21 playoff games or whatever, Allen. But like I said, he's played 500 more games. But all these little lessons, creating a lead, like how to get the ball, trying to run a play, pick and roll coverages, and then the adjustments, all the little nuances that happen in a playoff series. It's different than the regular season. And until you go through it, you don't really understand it. I wish this could have been more games because I want even more experience, more lessons, all that stuff. But it didn't happen that way.
We were talking about that plane ride after the play-in. You've competed, you've had all these huge moments over the years, but how important are those moments just looking back over the course of a career or just building a team?
Yeah, like you want, something to matter. This didn't matter the way we wanted it to, like ultimately, because we're hardwired to compete for, the ultimate prize. But that was something that was hard earned. Can't pay for it. Can't get it on Amazon. A group came together, had a bunch of adversity, a bunch of losses. It could have been much easier to, just fall apart. But instead, like I said, come together and not look at it cynically. It was more viewed as an opportunity. Hey, we can go do this. Now we're gonna have to do this the hard way and win 2 games on the road, be the first team that had done it. But he had a team that rallied around that energy. And we had those 2 wins, and it was just a fun plane ride. It's a plane ride that I'll remember, the rest of my career. And that's why we're irrationally thinking like, hey, this is going to continue. There's nothing to suggest in our prep, these last 2 practices and shoot-arounds, that the 2 games would have ended up like this. There's nothing. And I'm going to spend all summer, over analyzing everything, but there's no way I could have predicted that. And it shouldn't have been like this. I know that for damn sure. It'd probably been 2 L's, but not like this. But Cleveland is a damn good team. Okay, thank you.
Tyler, obviously with the 55-point loss, these back-to-back losses, was this something that even scratched your mind that could happen? Obviously, Spo talked about how he didn't even see this coming.
Yeah, it was obviously, leaving Cleveland. We came back to Miami. We definitely didn't expect this. Tough, last two games for us, both, 40-point, 50-point losses, really no excuses for it. It's embarrassing, and definitely humbling, a lot of work to be put in, and have a good opportunity to come back obviously next season and try to figure this out.
Tyler, for all the changes you made in your game after the Boston experience last year, And there were successes with those changes at times in this series, but overall, with how Cleveland defended you, what are the lessons now you take out of this series?
I just gotta watch the film and see what I can do to get better. Obviously, the last two games, it's very tough on me to play like that as the leader of the team. That's obviously not acceptable, and it's got to be better.
Now that you guys have obviously been through a lot this season, just from the start of it, how would you kind of sum up what the season's been like for you guys?
I mean, it's a lot of it's a roller coaster, ups and downs. At different points, we thought um, we were finding a little traction, and then a couple great games, and then it'd go back downhill. So there's no real consistency in our play. Um, and that was kind of the last 2 or 3 weeks. We played really well in those two playing games to get us to this point. And that's kind of what led us to think that obviously we didn't think we would have got swept how bad we got swept. And it was very humbling. But we'll back to the drawing board, and we figure out things to do.
Tyler, what goes through your mind when it's whatever the lead's 29 in the first quarter and 39, whatever it was at halftime, and 60 in the fourth? Like, these aren't numbers you'd ever think of happening in an NBA game. What were you thinking seeing those numbers on the board?
Well, I mean, shit, our season is on the line, obviously, with the game tonight. So when you go down that quick, obviously a little bit of doubt starts to creep in. But like I said, none of us expected this. Especially leaving Cleveland after game two, it felt like, the first half and if game two didn't go as how we wanted it, but we fought back. We were down 20 at half, fought back, made it a possession game at the end. I still lost the game, but coming back to Miami, we felt like we had something there, and obviously it didn't work out in our favor.
Appreciate you.
Bo said post game that it's a shame that this group is gonna be remembered for this 4-0 sweep and these last two home games. Can you just kind of talk about just the general reactions coming off of that 55-point loss?
Um, we lost.
Pam, what can you guys take away? I know we've asked a lot about how they were scheming, specifically Tyler, but in terms of how they defended you guys as a team, what can you take away from this series?
It's not even about how they defended us. I felt like we just weren't patient enough to see what they were doing. Especially the first quarter, just quick shots. Just playing random basketball. And as you know, in the playoffs, it can get ugly.
Pam, you said a few times that this has been the roughest season of your career. What now that it ended tonight, how would you kind of sum up what this season's been like for you and just the team?
I mean, a lot of ups and downs. But we fought at the end of the day. So, I mean, you're talking about a 10th seed that made the playoffs. That's one more victory we can leave with, but this has got to fuel a lot of us going into the off season. You got a lot of time to understand what happened today, look at and remember how this felt. And then you come back next year and see what happens.
Yeah, you spoke a lot about the experiences throughout the season, like the 10-game skid, and how that could build some sort of character. Can you just kind of talk about maybe that being the one bright side from this all? Is that, again, going into next season is going to fuel you guys?
Yeah, definitely gonna fuel us from that standpoint. Like I said, we could have let go of this rope a long time ago. We could have quit during the 10-game winning streak and just been like, just cough up the season. The organization, the coaches, players, but we were obsessed with trying to dig ourselves out of the hole, and to push yourself to a point where you give yourself a chance. That's all you can ask for. From my point of view, with the younger guys watching, them understanding that you never know what can happen in this league. You put a little faith and obsession into it.
Bam, 2 straight years of losing in the first round, and obviously you guys hold yourselves to a higher standard than that. What do you think needs to change?
What needs to change? I don't know. It's gonna be a lot of changes this summer. Just from my point of view, understanding how the guy with the silver hair works. So just be prepared for that, and for me, man, it's understanding. Gotta figure out how to win a game in the playoffs. You understand how hard it is when you actually get into these trenches. So you take that and you figure it out.
Bam, obviously they take the captaincy around here very seriously. And, you have that title for a reason, but at the same time, you've probably learned along the way that there's certain things you can control and certain things you can't. How frustrating is it when you want certain things and just can't will them into existence, even with that captaincy?
Like you said, man, it comes with the territory sometimes. Understanding that you can only control what you can control. For me, it's controlling the locker room. And that's trying to get guys ready for basketball games, which obviously I didn't do well at, especially this last game. So, going into this summer, I got a lot to think about, and how I can bounce back from this.
When Spo was just up there, he was talking about the plane ride you guys had after the play-in and just like how much fun that plane ride was. What do you remember from that moment? And I guess how do you cherish like some of those smaller victories you had this year in light of everything?
I mean, we've been through a lot this year. So for me, man, it's just you got to enjoy the small moments. We play basketball 9 to 10 months out the year, and you got to enjoy those small moments because you'll never know when you get those back. You never know who's going to be in the locker room next year. So being able to enjoy those moments, in real time, uh, it definitely makes it bigger than basketball.